Tears of the Kingdom had its work cut out for it. Following up on Breath of the Wild, one of the greatest games of all time, was never going to be easy. How do you even begin to improve upon what many consider to be near perfection? Well, you know what? I think they did it. They bloody well did it. Perhaps one of the smartest things Tears of the Kingdom does is simply do exactly what Breath of the Wild did again. Everything you knew and loved from before is still here and is just as enjoyable to experience all over again. I instantly felt at home, recognizing all those familiar areas I spent way too much time exploring back in 2017. I had goosebumps as those soft piano notes played gently over the sound of the wind in the grass, while I looked out across the rolling fields of Hyrule Kingdom, spotting and marking shrines and curious landmarks I was going to venture to next. Good games are fun, but great games make you feel something, and the vibes and feels here are immaculate. I knew some of what challenges would lay ahead, venturing back out into this vast kingdom with its freezing mountains and boiling deserts, full of terrifying beasts, ancient mysteries, and all its people's stories to uncover. But little did I know just how much this game had in store. There was just pure joy as I watched Link bound childishly down a hill, arms swinging wide, running headlong into a fight with my first bokoblin. And then I stumbled across a pile of scrap wooden wheels and tried and failed to make my first car. Yes, building vehicles is indeed a big part of the answer to how they've improved upon perfection. Before you've left Tears of the Kingdom's new tutorial area, you're granted a power called Ultra Hand, which lets you pick up and move just about any loose object, and more importantly, attach it to anything else. It's used brilliantly in solving puzzles, building vehicles, and for providing just a gleeful sense of letting you muck about with toys. It's also a wonderfully versatile and easy to use system, with parts highlighted by a big green booger where they're going to attach, snapping to various useful points on each other, which lets you attach them as centered or off-center as you like. Then a simple waggle of the stick will detach things if you get it wrong. The contraptions you can come up with span just about anything you can imagine. You can stick together a few planks to make a quick bridge or a ramp, or combine a hook and a plank to slide down a rail. But it's with the help of special pieces of equipment known as Zonai devices that you can start to get more creative and build things like cars, planes, catapults, and hovercraft. You'll assemble these more advanced contraptions using fans, wheels, rockets, and steering wheels, to name just a few of the devices at your disposal. Often you'll find these very helpfully scattered around as completely unsubtle hints about how to overcome an obstacle. Oh, you need to transport something a long distance? Well, how convenient. There's a bunch of fans and gliders just lying around here. I do love that though, as it's a brilliant way of clearly teaching you how all these things should work and how they go together, without ever needing to explicitly bang you over the head with a tutorial on how to make a plane. The discovery still feels like it's yours. You'll also find these big gumball machines in various locations that can dispense single-use Zonai devices for you to pull out at any time you desire. So when you stumble across a mountain you can't be bothered to climb, well, you can just whip up a quick hot air balloon and up you go. The power you're given over the world is immense, and it does one of my favorite things for games to do: let me feel like I'm breaking things and cheating. Sure, I could climb up that carefully crafted challenge you've made, or I could just strap some rockets to a plank and blast my way to the top. Of course, it's not cheating, it's just excellent game design, but it still feels so naughty and so good to use. It's also just a masterful way of reinventing and reusing this huge world that many of us have already conquered in Breath of the Wild, making exploring it all over again with these fantabulous contraptions an entirely fresh and joyful experience. Still, it is also a well-balanced mechanic. You'll either need to find Zonai devices or have enough of them saved up to build your little cheat machines, and once you do have them, they still require power to run. and the more devices you have to run, the faster they'll drain your batteries. To start with, you'll only have a battery with 3 chunks, but much like your health and stamina, that can be upgraded over the adventure. You can also attach single-use batteries to extend your power limit, or use some consumable charges in a pinch for a quick recharge. Vehicles also tend to disappear after entering a shrine or venturing away too far from them, so think of them as being more of a disposable, single-use solution to an immediate problem. You won't just build one super hovercraft at the start of the game and fly around on it until the end. Everything also works more or less just as you would expect it to, with some great physics in play. And while I never tried to find a limit to how much stuff I could attach together, I also never found one. So I'm very excited to see what kind of insane things people will come up with. It's also a testament to the world building that somehow all of these vehicles and devices never felt out of place. Occasionally, sure, I would do a bit of a double take as I strapped flamethrowers to a robot to create some kind of battle bot, or find myself driving around in some truck with spikes on it and think, what is this game? But Tears of the Kingdom has a joyful focus on creativity and fun over needing to explain itself or take itself too seriously. And it never failed to make me smile and fill my brain with ideas for what I could build next. There does tend to be a few go-to vehicles you'll find yourself making a lot. I lost count of the amount of gliders with fans that I built. So thankfully you can find a special blueprint ability that will save your last few designs and let you favorite any you'd like to make again, as well as providing you with a few pre-made schema that you can unlock. And as long as you have the needed bits and bobs nearby, it'll just assemble them all. Or if you don't, you can harvest and spend Zonite to whip things up out of thin air. It's a very welcome time saver. Ultra Hand is also just one of 4 new superpowers you get before you leave the tutorial island. Another is Fuse, which lets you fuse things together with your gear. For example, you could fuse a spear to another spear for an ultra long spear, or attach a boulder to a sword for a hefty hammer, or put a leaf on a stick to make a fan. You can even fuse Zonai devices too, so you could put an electric spike on your shield, or a flamethrower on a spear. And of course, you can attach stuff to your arrows, to make anything from flaming arrows, bomb arrows, homing arrows. You get the idea. It's another wonderfully powerful tool at your disposal for not only crafting powerful weapon combos, but also creating new ways to solve environmental puzzles. I always like to keep a flamethrowing shield on hand for when I needed to start fires. And you'll always want something with a boulder attached to help smash through rocks. Another major power you get is Recall, which will send an object moving back through time. This lets you do things like make a raft float back upstream, and of course it can be combined with other abilities or contraptions. For example, you could use your Ultra Hand ability to lift something up and down, use Recall on it, and hey presto, you made your own lift. It's another excellent addition to the sandbox, opening up all sorts of possibilities and blending in with the other powers in clever ways that often you don't think of at first, and then you realize with one of those wonderful aha moments. The other major power you get is Ascend, which is perhaps much simpler but no less useful. This lets you swim straight up through almost anything directly above you, providing it's not too far away. As someone who always complains about there being too much boring climbing in games, it's a power that made me feel seen. Although I should admit I do actually enjoy the climbing here. There's an element of challenge and puzzle solving that comes from needing to deal with your stamina wheel and plan out how you intend to scale mountains and cliffs that elevates the climbing from being dull and repetitive into a satisfying challenge. Getting to the top of the climb with just a sliver of stamina is always a little rush. Still, whenever I could ascend, I would ascend. And it's another power that I loved, again, because it feels a lot like cheating. And it is another perfect addition to the sandbox, removing a lot of that potential fatigue that could set in if we were forced to climb every mountain in this world again. It also feels like quite a technically impressive mechanic. The way you can just seamlessly swim through huge chunks of the world and pop out with no loading is very cool. And you get all of these powers in the tutorial, letting you loose into the world after a few hours with a heady amount of power and possibility at your fingertips. Now, while the world of Hyrule may be more or less the same as it was in Breath of the Wild down on the ground, it's also not lacking new things to see thanks to the new sky islands and archipelagos floating above. These are scattered around the sky, sometimes as parts of quests, but more often as simply more world to explore with shrines, puzzles, and special challenges to discover. They also add a wonderful sense of grandeur and size to the already epic map. Looking off into the distance and seeing all of these towering floating islands beckoning you to explore them, it just fills the mind with determination to get up there and find their secrets. Getting to them is a bit of a challenge, but also not too tricky, thanks mostly to the Skyview Towers. These towers will uncover each area of the map when you first use them, and also launch you all the way up into the sky, letting you glide to nearby sky islands. Of course, you can also build your own flying machines to get to them, or use recoil on chunks of rock that regularly fall from the sky. Tears of the Kingdom almost always gives you more than one way to get things done. It's also not totally fair to say the lands of Hyrule are the same as before. A lot has changed, so it's worth revisiting old areas to see what's new. Oh yeah, and there's also an entire underworld. Yes, an entire pitch black underworld that spans across the whole map. I won't go into too much detail about what's down there though, I'll leave that for you to discover. I loved exploring all of it though, from the sky down to the underworld. And as someone who had a deadline to review this game, I tried to tell myself to constantly stop messing around and focus on moving through the main quests. But it's just impossible not to be drawn into every little discovery. Every time you see something, you just have to go check it out. It also does a remarkable job of rewarding your curiosity too. Rarely will you ever investigate something and not get a little reward for your efforts. I especially couldn't ever go past the shrines. While yeah, you kinda need to do them because they give you one of the most powerful rewards, letting you increase your total health and stamina, you really want to do them because they're just so much fun. Honestly, I was blown away by how much creativity there is across all of them. The designers really went to town with all the new powers you wield, so no two shrines felt the same. And each one gives some unique idea or challenge, whether it be some new element of the combat to master, a fun way to use devices, or just an enjoyable puzzle. They're always a reward to do in their own right. They're also a super clever way to show you a little bit of the possibilities on offer, teaching you new ideas without ever feeling like hand-holding. Now, story-wise, I'm going to say nothing about Tears of the Kingdom's plot and let you discover it all for yourself. But what I will say though is that I loved its minimal storytelling. It's powerful and poetic in its simplicity, with just enough world building and lore to give a real sense of weight and gravitas to the actions of the heroes and villains. Sure, it's a story that's full of classic adventure archetypes and tropes, but it manages to handle them in a way that feels unique and avoids being cliched. I also love the way the storytelling is intertwined with you exploring and discovering the world for yourself, letting it feel like it's a part of your unique adventure and letting you piece it together in your own time. It's also just a delight to have a classic silent protagonist in Link. He lets you get lost in this world and doesn't bombard you with constant exposition and hints about what to do. It's just you, your map, your journal, and your curiosity to guide you. The main quest structure is quite similar to before, with you needing to visit the 4 major villages of the Goron, Gerudo, Rito, and Zora people and solve their respective temples to help sort out the troubles plaguing their lands. And like before, you'll also be rewarded with unique powers you can call on once you've helped them out, but they're a little different this time. Since you now have a whole heap of superpowers to start off with, the powers they grant you are a little less powerful, but still very useful and also much quicker to recharge. One for example just gives you a big gust of wind that can be used as a boost when gliding, or to knock enemies over. But perhaps the biggest difference is you not only get a power, you also get their spirit who fights alongside you. So towards the end of the game, you get a little posse of spirits running around with you. It's always very satisfying to see them all gang up on some poor mobs. Once you have them all though, it can be a touch messy trying to activate their powers, as for most of them you need to run up to them and press A to use them, but they're all running around too, so trying to get the right power activated can be tricky in the heat of battle. However, you can also dismiss or recall spirits at any time, so you can have as many or as few of them running around as you like. If I also had one other nitpick, it's simply that the Switch hardware does sometimes struggle. For most of the time, it runs fine, but some areas definitely see some frame rate drops. I would also say while I think it's a great looking game with really strong art direction and nice visual flair, I would be lying if I said I didn't want to see it running at higher resolutions on something more powerful. Who knows, maybe we'll get just that one day, if we ever get that long rumoured Super Switch. There's honestly so much more I could talk about. There are so many deep and interconnected systems and little details that make this a truly wonderful experience. But we'd be here all day if I dug into everything. And honestly, discovering them for yourself is so much a part of what makes them great. Tears of the Kingdom has very cleverly taken the exact genius behind Breath of the Wild, built up on that same enchanting world and those mechanics we loved, but then layered on top of that some mind-boggling new systems, whole new epic areas to explore, and a powerful story to carry it all. And even after finishing the main storyline and taking in as much as I could after around 45 hours of playtime, I still haven't seen so much of what this world has to offer. I'd hazard a guess there's at least double again that playtime left in side quests and exploring to be had. This is one that will keep you busy for a while. So, I'm just gonna say it, because really, it's all that needs to be said. The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom is somehow better than Breath of the Wild. It's a masterpiece. 1,000 times play.